I'm Trevor Griffiths. Hello and welcome to this presentation talk with slides in which we're going to be looking at what emotion really is. Now, I come from a medical background, so from my view I tend to take a very physical approach to what emotions are, and the way I look on things, emotions really are your personal energy getting organized within you. Now, I use this word personal energy for good reason, because I'm trying to avoid falling into either extreme, where some people look on energy in a very sort of esoteric way as if it's something mystical, and others look on it in a very scientific way as if it's just electricity. But the way I look on personal energy, there is a level of organization within your body, and that can either release movement in you or it hinders your movement. And that feeling of access to the ability to move is what I mean by personal energy. And sometimes we can engage with it and sometimes we can't. And to me, that's an organizational thing that's going on inside your brain and inside your body. Now, what does this have to say about emotional logic? Just to review the background, which has been mentioned before, the logic of emotional logic is the process of adjusting to change. And it's a logical process that you can make choices about it, and you probably remember from the self-help introductions of Plan B that the logical process is, can I recognize in this process of change what I'm worried that I might have to let go of or lose? If I can name it, can I prevent the loss of it? If I can't prevent the loss, is there something I can do to influence situations to get this back? And if no matter what I do I can't get it back, what does life look like if I have to let go of it? So recognize loss, prevent loss, recover loss, and let go of loss. That's the logical process. It's also an emotional process, because emotion, I take the view, is your energy on the move preparing you to make those adjustments. That's the organizational state. And so we have this neat little sort of soundbite. Emotion is energy in motion. It works in English, maybe not in other languages, but certainly people in other countries can get that concept very easily. But what is emotional logic, people ask me. This particular sentence is something that summarizes it quite well. If you can grasp it, it's quite a difficult concept to explain to people otherwise. But your emotional logic is your inbuilt capacity for one emotion to evolve constructively into another as you prepare to adjust to change. And it's that idea of evolving from one preparation state into a different preparation state appropriately for the state of adjustment that you are in relation to named hidden losses. This is what emotional logic is about. We all have it as an inbuilt capacity that we can move on from one emotion to another, but how able are we to focus in on relevant aspects of the situation, naming those hidden losses, and therefore move our emotions appropriately from one state on to another? We have choice over which emotions we stay with, which we move on from. And that is what emotional logic is all about, is learning how to do that and developing as a person along the way with that. But let's go a little bit more closely into what is emotion. So for me, as somebody's experiencing an emotion, their chemistry, their circulation, their body posture, everything about you is preparing either for action or for withdrawal. Now, along with that, the posture and facial expressions and so on is what we call body language. And the emotion also varies the tone of your voice. At the same time, along with the emotional preparation state that you have, there are chemicals released in your sweat which communicate your intentions to others. So in fact, your emotion has quite a bit of communication, messaging about it, so that other people, in subtle ways, are able to read your emotions and therefore understand what changes, what preparation states you're going through inside. That enables them to prepare appropriately as well. So this messaging, chemical messaging thing that's going on, plus also the what we call paraverbal language. What I mean by that is language is spoken words, but also the tone of our voice, the pacing of it, the gaps and so on can vary. That's called paraverbal language. And people say that even 80, perhaps more than 85% of the meaning of a sentence, a spoken sentence, is carried in the paraverbal language, in the intonation and so on. And that can completely change the meaning. So, there's perhaps an infinite number of ways of saying yes, some of which might actually mean no, or the other way around. And we have to learn to read these paraverbal signs. But the paraverbal content of language is almost entirely driven by the emotional preparation state that somebody's going through inside. At the same time, as part of this preparation, your hormone systems, the endocrine systems of your body, are reorganizing you. And the famous one, of course, is adrenaline, which is organizing you either to fight a situation or to run away, flight. I had another one in there because they're called fellowship, which is basically that some people are able to talk their way through danger. And actors going on stage will often have stage nerves, but what's happening is their adrenaline is preparing them to project their voices better. So the adrenaline has a useful purpose to prepare you. And other hormones, particularly the steroid hormones, stress-related steroid hormones, prepare every cell of your body within a few seconds to become more responsive or less responsive, so that during the day steroid levels are high in the body to make you more responsive, and at night they're low, so your cells settle down to a maintenance type and a healing type chemistry and so on. So hormones running through your circulation, your blood circulation, are coordinating, integrating cellular systems in vastly different parts of your body all at the same time towards a common goal. Now, you wouldn't know it, but as you prepare to engage in the world in action or to withdraw, your immune system also prepares, and this is under the influence of the hormones, and also directly by some nerves that are released into lymph glands. But your immune system is prepared in case there's any damage from the confrontation or interaction that you're about to have. So the immune system shifts into get ready to limit damage mode and to resist infection, as opposed to the nighttime resting mode where it's in healing mode and so on. So hormones prepare your immune system. You wouldn't know it, but it's happening. That's all part of emotion. And at the same time, your mind frame gets prepared as well. The way your brain handles information shifts so that if you're going out into the world to take action there, your mind frame is taking information from your senses and preparing it, and you become more aware of movement in the corner of your eye, the corner of your vision, for example, so that you can react more quickly to things that are happening there. But sometimes if you're in an emotional state where you're withdrawing from the world, whether it's through sort of guilty self-questioning or shock reactions or whatever, your mind frame will start looking inside. You'll be focusing more on your memories and values and so on. So your mind frame prepares as well. That's part of emotion. And also, your memory gets activated, and the memory of how this felt before affects the planning that you're going to go through. So memory gets involved. As you have an emotional state, your memories are getting activated as well. And likewise, if you encounter a situation, your memories will bring back emotions that you had on previous occasions. Now, all of that is tied up with emotion, and I'd like to pick up that last point, the memory of how this felt before affects planning. There's often confusion about what is the difference between emotion and feeling. And I believe, I accept this is a wide open question, but the way I use it, and I think it is a reasonable way, because I take the view that emotion is a gut level and a brain preparatory level alteration of your inner organization. A lot of that is happening pre-consciously, before it comes up into your conscious mind. And what a proportion of that will come up into your conscious mind is the way things feel. So the way I distinguish them is to say that emotion is an inner preparation state that affects all of these aspects of your organization, body and mind. And the feeling is the conscious experience of that emotion, and that will vary enormously from person to person. So there's a sort of a very rapid run through how I take a physical view of emotion and how that relates to feeling. Now, what emotion is not, I take the view, it's not all in the mind, as I've been explaining. It is actually a physical, ongoing preparation state of organization in your body. It is not just a side effect of thinking. There are some people and some therapists, for example, who think that emotion simply comes from the habits of thinking that we have. Now, certainly it is true that our habits of thought can affect our emotions, but in emotional logic we're taking a vastly different view of that our emotional states are actually highly reactive to situations ongoing before we even start thinking. We start thinking about our emotions rather than the other way around. Emotion is not there just to spoil life. These preparation states have important, vital, life-saving, useful purposes, and it helps to acknowledge that and to even welcome them and to understand them and to be able to turn them to their useful purposes, to harness them, not to tell ourselves off for having them. And likewise, emotion therefore is not unmanly. It's all about being effective in the world. It's all about being able to relate and to team up properly and to understand each other and to face issues. Emotion is not at war with reason. There are purposes in all of this. There are values that are being challenged that induce these reactions, these emotional reactions within us, and we can reason completely in partnership with our emotions to work out what is the best way to act and react in the midst of it all. And so that likewise, emotion is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of engagement. It's a sign of being connected and of having values that are worth responding to. And here's the other point. Emotion, therefore, is not yours alone. Emotion is driven largely by interactions that are going on in our relationships. There's a movement somehow at a pre-conscious level between people. There's messaging going on between people. And some of that comes up into consciousness. And so our feelings, our experience of these emotions is driven partly by what's happening in other people. And we need to learn to interpret that, and we can pick up their messages and work out what's my stuff and what's their stuff that's going on. So there's a lot happening with emotion, and a lot of it is to do very much with our relationships and how we knit in to social systems. So I take the view that our experience of emotion actually is what connects us with other people. Emotion is not just mine alone. It's not what makes me special and valuable, and it's not just in my inner world. It is actually my inner world in connection with other people. It's me preparing, or you preparing for action or withdrawal, and your emotion is communicating to others that you are getting prepared and is telling them that something different is about to happen, so watch out. And this connection gives them a chance to prepare for change, and their emotion is also communicating to you so that you can prepare in response to them. So there's a lot of working out, reason working completely in harmony with our experience of emotion, our feelings, so that we can see through the feelings to the preparation states and the relationships that are on the move in the background. Remember, emotion is energy in motion, personal energy. It's getting organized. So therefore, emotion has a social networking function. It prepares a whole social system of people to adjust together constructively to change. Emotion is not yours alone. It actually makes families work properly if people can understand and interpret other people's emotions in a constructive way. It makes workplaces thrive, community groups, neighbourhoods. If you have a difficult neighbour, perhaps you can get inside what's driving them, what is their grief about. So what about the humanity of grief emotions? Basically, in its wider sense of connection with others or with anything that you value in life, we're talking about love. Love is that connection in which we are moved by values, anything that we feel bonded to, that we would notice the lack of. If we value it, then as we get drawn close to it, we'll experience joy. So there's joy on drawing close together in love, and there's grief on separation or brokenness or misunderstanding. This is not only about people. I mean, take your wallet or a handbag, right? If you see somebody going to take your wallet or handbag, you'll experience a grief reaction. It's because, there are important things in there. So the shared life together is a cycle of gathering things together in which there's joy and letting go of things as we need to move on in life, and certain things we need to gather as we move on and certain things we need to let go of. And of course, there's the problem. It's the letting go that can be difficult, that where we value it so much and don't want to let go of it, but things are changing so that we have to. That's where the grief can start getting moved. Now, I'm taking the view that it is important to value things, and therefore it isn't a matter of getting rid of those grief feelings. We need to actually understand them and welcome their energy, reorganize so that we can turn that movement into something constructive. We're not talking about letting life settle down to a deadpan flatness. We're talking about differences between people, bringing life, bringing interest and fascination and exploration. It's that liveliness that will generate joy, but also along with that, where there is connection, there is going to be grief. And we can turn that grief to something constructive because it has a useful purpose in shared life. The various emotions of grief are your energy on the move, preparing you to reconnect with others, to remake joy when change has pushed you out of a comfort zone. That's the useful purpose. That's why it's inbuilt as part of your survival mechanism. And if we try to get rid of these unpleasant emotions, we will actually find that we become unloving, in fact, undisconnected, where although there might be an aim for serenity or calm, in fact, there's a sort of a slight air of unreality about that, where we're not really moved by other people's situations. But if we are moved at this really gut level in our being, then we can form a social system, a family, we can form a society that actually is caring and responsive and looks after people as they are finding things difficult during times of change, so that we can build a stronger network and support everybody through those difficult times. That's how grief may unite us. So you only grieve if you've loved. It's one of the things that I'm frequently saying to people when I'm talking with them about difficulty using emotional logic. You only grieve if you loved. So that makes you more of a human being, not less. Welcome to the human race. Rejoin the human race. Don't tell yourself off for your grief emotions. So grief is a set of drives that move you to reconnect. It's not one emotion, but it's several emotions. And none of them feel good. They can get mixed up with each other, creating emotional chaos. And there's the problem. But remember, we say that there are no negative emotions, only unpleasant ones that have useful purposes to help people adjust together to the risk of loss. But this risk of emotional chaos, the drift into emotional chaos, when several different values are being challenged at the same time, so that you can be angry about one loss, guilty about another, shocked about another, depressed about another, all at the same time, and you end up in a chaotic emotional state in which you don't really know what you feel. But it just feels horrible, and so on. So, but if each emotion occurred separately, the information would be constructive. We'd be able to work out what's going on. But because when you do card patterns, you'll see grief emotions never occur one at a time. Complex grief for several hidden losses makes people also lose insight. They don't know what they feel, they don't know why. There's too many things going on at the same time. If you're making loss reaction worksheets out, a loss list on the side, you could add loss of insight. When people are finding themselves in very chaotic states, they don't know who they are, their identity starts to get challenged, they begin to think they're unreasonable or weak or incapable in some way, start telling themselves off, re-shocking themselves as a result. And this loss of insight then allows a drift into true emotional chaos. And out of that emotional chaos, because emotion has this social networking function, a messaging function, if there is emotional chaos within you, it can then lead on to a sense of social disconnection. We become isolated. People look on us maybe as if we're a bit odd or dangerous, or we just don't understand. It becomes mysterious and unpredictable. So we end up with social disconnection rather than a really supportive society. So emotional logic, the emotional logic toolkit, is not only there to help an individual. Of course it is. That's where we start. But it enables you, when you work with others, to help see anybody's influence within a social system. What's going on inside them transmits, it spreads. But as people learn from their emotions, the feedback and insight can alter people's influences within the whole social system. If one member of a family begins to understand anger differently, it can change the way that whole family functions, and that family's influence in the whole neighbourhood or this local school might change the way a whole school or neighbourhood works, and so on. So as people learn from their emotions and learn to understand their emotions better and other people's, their influence within a whole social system alters as well. And the feedback and learning that people get just from looking at card patterns and loss reaction worksheets and understanding the overview, turning points and so on, it can show where energy is stuck in the system, and when learning then alters communication, it releases energy within the whole system. So it isn't just that one individual starts to thrive through understanding their emotional logic, but because of the communication systems, whole systems can suddenly start to function much better, and everybody can start to support each other, and they just feel, hey, there's a bit of a buzz going here, or there's a bit of morale building up. And that's so important for people to actually function maximally in their own individual capacities when they're become fully people in their personal development, makes them knit into families and other systems, helping to release that energy within the whole system, the whole team. So when the messaging within a system is getting complex and you can't interpret it and so on, some emotional habits that are generating problems are unhelpful to release energy for change, and not just the individual but the whole system can get stuck, and that's called an attractor state in chaos theory, which we'll be learning about a bit later. But sometimes no matter how much input you give into such a stuck system, nothing seems to change. But we talked before about butterfly effects, and that's what we're really looking for in this, because sometimes a small amount of learning at the right time and place can start a large change in the state of the whole system. It's because at that pre-conscious, very physical, communicating level, where we're earthed people, and there's a lot of dynamic going on as we're really forming our lives together, some of which we become conscious of as emotional feeling and as thoughts and so on. But sometimes a small amount of learning input that can add insight into what's going on, enlarge our conscious understanding of what's happening, and there can be a massive change in the state of the whole system in which people together start to thrive together as well. So there we go, that's what I wanted to say about what emotion is. It is physical, it is pre-conscious, it can come up into consciousness, but actually the level at which it works is social. It's a relational dynamic which moves us from within so that we start to prepare reactions and we become conscious of that dynamic. Any emotion is energy in motion. And we need to learn to interpret that better and to help others to interpret their experience of emotion, their feelings better as well.